There is a specific kind of heartbreak that doesn't scream. It doesn't sound like slamming doors or shattered glass, and it doesn't look like a tear-stained fight in the middle of the street where everyone can see the wreckage. Sometimes, the most devastating endings are the ones that happen in total silence. They happen when two people are sitting in the same room, perhaps only a few feet apart, yet the distance between them has somehow become impossible to cross. We have spent time exploring the agony of losing a future we wanted, and we have talked about the grief of looking back at who we used to be. But now, we have to talk about something even harder. The moment you realize that to save the memory of a love, you have to kill the relationship. This is the territory of Adele's Love in the Dark. It is a song that hurts differently than her other ballads, because it asks about a villain, and it isn't about a victim. It is about the terrifying maturity of choosing to walk away before you start to hate each other. You probably know the feeling of a love that is slowly curdling into something else. It starts as a heaviness in your chest, a subtle fatigue that settles over your interactions, making even the simplest conversations feel like walking through water. You look at the person across from you, someone you love, someone you have built a history with, and you realize that while the love is still there, the connection has gone dark. Adele captures this with a precision that is almost uncomfortable to witness, describing a relationship where the fighting has stopped, not because there is peace, but because there is no energy left to argue. We often think that the opposite of love is hate, but Love in the Dark teaches us that the true opposite of love is indifference. It is the moment when you stop trying to fix it because you finally understand that it is broken beyond repair. And in that realization, there is a very specific, very adult kind of fear. It is the fear that if you stay one day longer, you will destroy everything good that ever existed between you. Most breakups in pop culture are depicted as explosive events driven by betrayal or catastrophe. We are taught to wait for the big thing to happen, the affair, the lie, the unforgivable act to give us permission to leave. But what do you do when the big thing never comes? What do you do when the person is good and you are good and the love was real, but the life you are living together is slowly suffocating you? This song gives voice to the people who leave, not because they are angry, but because they are exhausted. It validates the idea that wanting to survive is a good enough reason to go. We spoke in our last story about grieving the past, about mourning the version of yourself that existed before the world got its hands on you. That was a grief for what was gone. This story is about protecting what is left. It is about looking at the ashes of a relationship and deciding to sweep them up gently, rather than letting the wind scatter them into something ugly. Resentment is a far more dangerous emotion than anger. Anger is hot. It burns clean, it flares up, and then it dies down, leaving clarity in its wake. Resentment is cold. It lives in the walls, it accumulates in the silence, and it corrodes the foundation of a home until the roof simply caves in. Adele's lyrics in this track are a desperate attempt to outrun resentment. She is pleading for a clean break, asking to be let go before the bitterness takes root. When she sings, "Take your eyes off me so I can leave," she is admitting something profoundly vulnerable. She is admitting that she is not strong enough to leave if the connection remains engaged. If you look at her, if you engage with her, she might stay out of guilt, or out of habit, or out of a misplaced sense of duty. And if she stays, the resentment will win. There is a profound mercy in choosing distance. We are often told that leaving is selfish, that the noble thing to do is to stick it out, to fight for the relationship no matter the cost. But there is a point where fighting for it actually becomes an act of violence against your own soul. Staying in a relationship that keeps you in the dark, that keeps you hidden, small, and muted, is not an act of love. It is a slow erasure of the self. And eventually, that erasure turns into hostility toward the person holding the eraser, even if they aren't doing it on purpose. Love in the Dark is the sound of a woman realizing that she is beginning to disappear. It is the realization that I want to live, and not just survive. That line is the heartbeat of the entire narrative. It is the moment the protagonist wakes up and realizes that survival is not a high enough standard for a human life. We can survive almost anything. Humans are incredibly adaptable creatures, capable of enduring loneliness even while sleeping next to someone else. But to live? To live requires light, and you cannot find the light if you are committed to staying in the dark. This song hurts because it forces us to confront the times in our own lives when we settled for survival. It asks us to look at the relationships we hold on to, not just romantic ones, but friendships, family dynamics, even jobs, and ask, am I staying here because I am growing, or am I staying here because I am afraid of the guilt of leaving? Guilt is a powerful anchor. It keeps ships in the harbor long after they should have sailed. We feel guilty for changing. We feel guilty for outgrowing people who didn't do anything wrong. We feel guilty for wanting more than fine, for wanting more than stable. Adele confronts this guilt head-on, acknowledging that her departure will cause pain, but standing firm in the knowledge that staying would cause damage. Pain is temporary. Damage can be permanent. If she stays, she risks becoming a version of herself she doesn't recognize, a version that is bitter, snapping, and closed off. She chooses the sharp, sudden pain of the breakup over the dull, chronic ache of a loveless life. There is a line in the song where she says, "I'm not the one." It sounds simple, almost cliché, until you sit with the weight of it in this specific context. She isn't saying, "I'm not the one," because she doesn't love him. She is saying, "I'm not the one," because she knows she cannot be the person he needs her to be without losing herself. It is an admission of incompatibility, which is often harder to accept than a lack of love. You can love someone deeply and still be completely wrong for the life they are trying to build. Admitting that requires a suspension of ego. It requires you to step back and say, "I am not the villain, and you are not the villain. But we are also not the heroes of this story anymore." The song creates a visual of a vast, unbridgeable ocean between two people who are theoretically close. It feels like we're oceans apart. That metaphor lands so heavily because we have all felt the loneliness of proximity. There is no loneliness quite as sharp as the kind you feel when you are with someone else. When you are alone in an empty room, the silence makes sense. When you are alone in a room with someone you love, the silence feels like a judgment. It is in that silence that the darkness lives. The darkness isn't necessarily a lack of knowledge. It is a lack of being known. To love someone in the dark is to love them without really seeing them, or without letting them see you. It is a performance of intimacy rather than the real thing. Adele's refusal, "I can't love you in the dark," is a refusal to pretend. She is demanding to be seen, even if being seen means being seen walking away. One of the most tragic aspects of this kind of separation is the acknowledgement that this is never ending. She knows that the love won't just turn off like a light switch. When you leave someone you respect, someone who has been kind to you, the love doesn't die. It just has to be relocated. You have to take that love and put it somewhere where it can't hurt you anymore. You have to place it in a box, seal it up, and put it on a high shelf in the back of your mind. It remains there, preserving the memory of who you were together, but you can no longer take it down and play with it. This is why she asks him to, "Please don't fall apart." It is a plea for him to maintain his dignity, because if he falls apart, she will want to put him back together. And if she puts him back together, she will never leave. This dynamic, the caretaker and the one needing care, is often the glue that holds expired relationships together for years too long. We stay because we are afraid the other person won't survive without us. But love in the dark suggests that staying out of pity is the ultimate form of disrespect. It assumes the other person is too weak to handle their own life. By leaving, Adele is actually giving him a vote of confidence. She is saying, "This will hurt, but you will survive, and I will survive, and we will both be better for the truth of it." It is a harsh kindness. It feels cruel in the moment, like ripping off a bandage, but the alternative is letting the wound fester underneath the fabric until it poisons the blood. The music itself reflects this resolute sadness. It doesn't build to a massive screaming crescendo like rolling in the deep. It swells, yes, but it remains grounded, anchored by a piano that sounds like it is thinking. It sounds like a late-night conversation where the volume never goes above a whisper, but every word changes the trajectory of a life. It creates a space for the listener to project their own oceans-apart moments. Think about the times in your life when you knew deep down that the expiration date had passed. Think about the mornings you woke up and felt a wave of exhaustion before your feet even hit the floor, simply because you knew you had to play a role for another day. That exhaustion is your intuition screaming at you. We often ignore that voice because we are afraid of the chaos that comes with listening to it. We are afraid of the logistics of separating our lives. Who gets the friends? Who gets the apartment? Who gets the memories? But Adele reminds us that the chaos of leaving is temporary, while the tragedy of staying is cumulative. Every day you stay in the dark is a day you steal from your own future. It is a day you steal from the person you are with too, because you are denying them the chance to be with someone who can love them in the light. That is a perspective we rarely consider, that leaving is an act of generosity toward the partner we are leaving behind. We think we are protecting them by staying, but really, we are blocking them from finding a love that is whole. We are taking up space in their life that should be occupied by someone who doesn't have to convince themselves to stay. Love in the dark is the anthem of releasing that space. It is the sound of unclenched hands. It captures the moment when the fear of the unknown finally becomes smaller than the pain of the known. And this connects us back to the idea of protecting what is left. If you wait until you hate them, the ending will be a war. You will say things you can never take back. You will weaponize their vulnerabilities. You will tarnish every good memory you ever made. But if you leave now, while there is still sadness, while there is still a quiet sort of love, you get to keep the past. You get to look back in 10 years and say, we were good to each other, but we just couldn't make it work. You get to keep the respect. The song hurts because it requires us to be the adult in the room. It requires us to override our childish desire for comfort and safety in favor of truth. It is easy to be the victim. It is easy to say, they hurt me, so I left. It is incredibly hard to say, they loved me, but I had to leave anyway. That is a lonely position to be in. You don't get the sympathy of your friends in the same way. You don't get the righteous anger to fuel you. You just get the silence of the dark and the knowledge that you did the right thing. Adele's voice in this song is stripped of the usual theatrics. She isn't showing off her range. She is using her voice to carry the weight of the decision. It sounds tired. It sounds resigned. It sounds sure. There is a finality to it that is terrifying. When someone screams at you, there is still a chance to fix it, because the energy is still flowing between you. But when someone speaks to you with the quiet resolve of love in the dark, you know it is over. The energy has stopped flowing. The cord has been cut. And this brings us to the most difficult realization of all. Sometimes, love is not enough. We are raised on fairy tales and movies that tell us love conquers all, that if the feeling is strong enough, the circumstances don't matter. But the reality of adult life is that love is just one ingredient in a relationship. You also need timing. You need compatibility. You need a shared vision of the light. And you need to be able to look at the other person without feeling like you are drowning. Love in the dark is the eulogy for a love that had the feeling but lacked the light. It is a song that grants us permission to prioritize our own light. It tells us that we do not owe the world our suffering. We do not owe a relationship our soul just because we signed a contract or made a promise years ago. People change. We grow in different directions. The tectonic plates of our lives shift, and suddenly the continent we were standing on has split in two. You can spend your life trying to build a bridge across that widening gap, exhausting yourself, carrying bricks back and forth until you collapse. Or you can look across the water, wave goodbye, and turn toward the horizon that is actually on your side. Adele chose to turn. She chose the horizon. And in doing so, she gave us a map for how to navigate the darkest parts of our own hearts. She showed us that you can break a heart without breaking a person. She showed us that the most loving thing you can do sometimes is to be the one who walks away. Because by walking away, you stop the decay. You freeze the love in time before it rots. You choose the pain of oceans apart over the slow death of drowning together. And in that choice, there is a terrible, beautiful freedom. The freedom to step out of the dark. The freedom to take a breath that doesn't feel heavy. The freedom to find out who you are when you aren't trying to be someone else for the sake of peace. So, as the final notes of the piano fade out, we are left not with a resolution, but with a question. A question that echoes in the silence that follows the song. It is a question that asks us to examine the distance in our own lives, the gaps we are trying to bridge, and the cost of the bridges we are building. I want you to think about a time in your life when you knew something was over before you actually ended it. Looking back now, do you wish you had left sooner to protect the memory of what you had? Or was there a time when you walked away from someone you still loved, simply because you knew that staying would eventually make you hate them? How did you find the courage to choose the distance? Tell me about that quiet moment in the comments below.